Good evening. This is Pastor Barbara, aka Preacher with Paris. Today is August 23rd, 2017. It's been a couple of weeks that we haven't made and uploaded a video. So if you're wondering why there are spaces, we uh, make this video during a live lesson, and because of illness and trip and some technical problems with the computer and so forth, we just haven't done anything for 2 weeks. So it's been a while. Um, we are going to start, and I'm going to try to move some things around here where it's going to be a little easier for me to handle this. Larry, you want to get us on ops only? And then following the lesson, we will change it so that other people can chat also. But since ops know that during the lesson we don't talk, unless of course we have a dark screen or you can't hear me or there's something I have to know, that's different. And that's the reason we do that. It is Wednesday night, and Wednesday night we're in the Old Testament. We're in the book of uh, Numbers. There are 5 books of the Torah, or 5 books of Moses: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. We're in the middle of Numbers. We have some repetition of some things, not only in this portion of the Bible, but in other portions of the Bible. One prophet will write about something, and then a historian will write about something, and another historian will write about something. And because different people have written, they're in different books, so you find them in different parts of the Bible, but they might be saying the same thing. What we're going to study tonight, it's going to take us about a chapter before we get there, but it's probably one of the things that makes the rest of, at least the rest of the books of Moses, extremely interesting. And I will tell you up front a few things, but let me go back and tell you that right now, where we are, let's say a couple of weeks before we had this 2-week period out where we weren't making, where we weren't having Bible studies and making videos, the tabernacle was built. The tabernacle was dedicated. The first things that needed to be done, worship, sacrifices, all of the things within the tabernacle being used, they were there. Where were they? All right, they're in Sinai. Where's Sinai? Over here we have Egypt. Over here, I've got to look because it's all backwards for me. Over here we have Israel. Now between Egypt and Israel, there is some desert, and it goes from north to south. When you get way to the southern part, you get to the Sinai Peninsula or the Sinai Desert. And there is the mountain upon which Moses went to get all of the law. When he came down from the mountain, read them the law, they built the tabernacle, they did everything that they were told to do that they could do. And this was about a year later that we now get to where we are now. They celebrated the feast of the Passover, getting out of Egypt. The people have never ceased to complain about wanting to go back to Egypt. And I think we're that way too. When we find that being adults is not the easiest thing in the world, we say, wouldn't it be wonderful if I could go back when I was a kid? When you were a kid, you didn't get to do half the stuff you wanted to do. You had nothing to say about what you would eat or how it would be cooked. I mean, it was not the most important time of your lifetime. But when things aren't good, it's easy to say, oh, it was better back then, even if back then wasn't any better. Now they were slaves. Remember, Moses had been placed in. They were killing boy babies, and Moses' mother put him in this little basket, and he's floating down the Nile River when the Pharaoh's daughter is taking a bath in the Nile River, and she sees him and adopts him. And then he's there for 40 years until he does something illegal, and he's seen doing it, so he escapes and he goes to live with the man that became his father-in-law for 40 years. And then is the burning bush when the Lord speaks to him and says, it's now time to get your people back. So he was about 40 years as Pharaoh's grandson, and then 40 years living as a shepherd and so forth in another area of Arabia. Um, and then the last 40 years was from the time that he went back to get the children of Israel out of Egypt until the time he died. So that's what's before us. We're going to get to the time where I hesitate saying Israel made the biggest mistake it's ever made, but at least it made one of the biggest mistakes it ever made. And I believe the mistake that they made there is part of the reason why Israel is having a problem and having to share land with the Palestinians, even though the Bible clearly said it was given to the Jewish nation and it was given to them forever. All right, let me make a little move here and get my Bible where I can see it. The people had just complained because of what they were eating or weren't eating. So God said, tonight you're going to eat meat until it comes out of your ears, and tomorrow morning you're going to eat bread. Well, that bread would continue for 40 years, actually, until they were then living in the promised land. Now, right after that happened, Miriam and Aaron. Aaron is Moses' older brother. When God talked to Moses in the burning bush and said, I want you to go and get the people out of slavery and bring them into freedom, he said, oh God, I don't speak very well. And God said, okay, bring your brother Aaron. God told Moses, I'll talk to you. Aaron can talk to the people, but any communication from me is going to come to Moses. Moses had a sister. Remember that when Moses was a baby and put in that little basket and floating in the Nile, over on the land was his sister, who was probably about 7, perhaps maybe even 8, between 6 and 8 years old. And she was kind of hiding to see what was going to happen. When she saw the Pharaoh's daughter showing interest and wanting to take the baby, she stepped up. And of course, a woman who has not carried a child does not have the milk to feed a child. So even 7, 8-year-old children know that back in those days. And she stepped up and she said, well, for right now, would you like me to suggest a Jewish woman to feed him until he's old enough and he can come and live with you? And Moses got to be raised in those early breastfeeding days by his own mother. So Miriam is 6 to 8 years old, older than Moses also. So that family is Moses, and then the older Aaron, who became the high priest, and then Miriam. Miriam was the one, when they crossed the Red Sea, And when they were safe, she's the one that led a lot of maidens in a dance and singing and playing of tambourines. So now we know who they are. Chapter 12 says, Then Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses. I don't care who we are and who our leader is. There comes a day we think we could have done it better, or if they would have asked us, we would have given them advice. He had married an Ethiopian woman, and we don't know a lot of the details. We don't know if his wife, the daughter of his father-in-law that he married when he escaped at age 40 from uh, Egypt and went to live out in the desert and met these girls and their father and married one of the girls. We don't know whether this was a second wife or whether his wife had passed away. We have no information, but he married her, and she was an Ethiopian woman. Some Bibles suggest that maybe she was a dark-skinned something else. The fact is, she was not Jewish. So they said, Has the Lord indeed spoken only through Moses? Has he not spoken through us also? I can just see the board, the church board, or I can see the board of deacons saying, what does the pastor know? He should consult us more often. We know how to run business in this town, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, the two of them, they were, of course, minor people. God was using them, but in a minor way if we look at how God was using Moses. Has he not spoken through us also? And the Lord heard it. Be careful what you say, even if you don't say it out loud, even if you just think it. Because the Lord hears it, the Lord knows it. And the Lord heard it. Now the man Moses was very humble. Well, he's the one that said, don't pick me as a speaker. I don't speak good. A lot of us would have been so happy at being chosen that, man, we would have said, sure, I know a lot of people who can't speak very well, but that doesn't keep them from making speeches, and that doesn't keep them from holding any position that they can get people to elect them to. Moses was very humble, more than all the men on the face of the earth. Suddenly the Lord said to Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, called the three of them. He said, come out, you three, to the tabernacle. So the three came out. Then the Lord came down in the pillar of a cloud. Remember that when they were stopped, above the tabernacle was a cloud, and at night it was lit up like fire so they could see. So he told them to come out. God came. The only other place where they could have talked to him, not really face to face, but as close as possible, would have been in the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant was. But he told them to come to the tabernacle. They did. He came down in a cloud and stood in the door of the tabernacle and called. So what they're seeing is a cloud. What they're hearing is the voice of God. And he stood in the door of the tabernacle and he called Aaron and Miriam. And they both went forward and he said, now, hear my words. If there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, make myself known to him in a vision. Whether he's speaking to the three of them or the two of them, apparently he's just speaking to Miriam and Aaron. And he says, if among the two of you there's a prophet, I have spoken to you in a vision. I, the Lord, make myself known to him. I speak to him in a dream. That's how God spoke to most of the prophets, major and minor prophets that wrote in the Bible. Not so with my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my house. I speak to him face to face. Not in a dream when you're asleep and you just wake up and have a memory of it. Not in a vision, which is sort of like a dream you have in the daytime when you're awake. I speak to every other prophet in a vision or a dream. I speak to Moses face to face, and he did on the mountain. Remember that Moses, when he came down from the mountain after he got the 10 Commandments and the rest of the law, he had to put a veil over his face because Moses' face glowed. He had spoken to God face to face, and his own face took some of the glow of the face of God. Even plainly and not in dark sayings. I don't use a story. I don't use a poem. I said, it's like such and such. He said, no. With him, it's not in dark sayings. I speak to Moses clearly. And he sees the form of God. While they were on the mountain and he was getting the law, you recall that God passed over and Moses only saw the back of a figure. Moses never saw the front of, now God is a spirit, so obviously God was taking the form of a man, but he didn't see the front of that man. He saw only the back. When were you not afraid? Why then, if this is true? I have spoken to Moses so personally, so upfront, so clearly, like no other prophet. And you too have the nerve to speak against him. Now, anytime you're going to speak against a man of God or a prophet or a minister or whatever, you're talking about somebody who's not perfect. Moses was not perfect. Moses did several things I could mention that were not the best choices. But none of us are perfect. We're forgiven. And every day, part of holiness and sanctification is to become every day more godlike. But we never get to that before we die. And who are you to speak against my servant Moses? So the anger of the Lord was aroused against them, and he departed. And when the cloud departed from above the tabernacle, suddenly Miriam became leprous. Just like all of a sudden I got this thing on my arm, where mine became black, hers suddenly became white. As white as snow. Aaron turned toward Miriam and saw she was a leper. So Aaron said to Moses, "Oh, my Lord, this is not a manner of speaking like some of us say, oh my God, oh Lord." It's not a manner of speaking. When we call somebody Lord, we have made them Lord. They cannot force us to accept them as Lord. Even the Lord Jesus. We have to give ourselves to him and make him Lord. He will not lord it over us unless we wish him to be our Lord. Remember that Mary, the mother of Jesus, her cousin, when she met Mary, and the baby inside of her jumped, which was John the Baptist, And she said, how blessed am I that the mother of my Lord, she didn't say the mother of God. She already believed that Mary carried, I don't know whether she understood the Son of God. I don't know how much she understood, but she said, Mary is the mother of my Lord. She made that baby, yet unborn, her Lord. It's something you have to do. So now Moses' older brother says to him, um, oh my Lord. In other words, Moses, you're the boss. You're the man in charge here. Please do not lay this sin on us, which we have done foolishly and in which we have sinned. They admitted that in trying to elevate their position over his, they were wrong. God never called them. Moses was called. They never saw a burning bush. God never said to them, take off your shoes, for the ground on which you're standing is holy ground. Whose flesh is consumed when he comes out of the mother's womb. So Moses cried to the Lord, saying, please heal her, I pray. Then the Lord said to Moses, if her father had but spit in her face, would she not be shamed 7 days? Remember, some people have to be outside of the camp. And certain sins, we wouldn't refer to them now as sins, but people were considered ceremoniously unclean. Not that they had done something nasty, but even having touched a dead body or having a dead body fall on you. There were things that made you ceremoniously unclean, so they weren't able to perform their duties in the tabernacle. Said, wouldn't that have meant 7 days of shame? Let her be shut outside of the camp for 7 days. And after that, she can be received again. So Miriam was shut out of the camp 7 days. And the people did not journey. They're in between one town and another. They didn't journey for a week until she was brought in again. And afterward, the people moved from Hazeroth and camped in the wilderness of Paran, or Paran. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. That, excuse me, happened just before they got to a place called Kadesh Barnea. Kadesh Barnea is a border town, so think Tijuana, think Detroit and Ontario. You cross, you take a certain step, and you're in another country. Now, their purpose, God's purpose, Moses' purpose, was to immediately, now the tabernacle's set up, they have a place to worship. God has told them, when you move, the tabernacle goes in front. The custom in those days was that the king, remember when Moses was on the mountain and Aaron helped him build the calf, and he said, why did you do that? And they said, well, we wanted something to go before us if we're ever in a war or we ever have to march out. Some important person must be in the front and everybody else follows. No, it was God's intention, it was Moses' intention to, as soon as they got to Canaan, go in. God said, I have a land for you. I will give it to you. It will be yours forever. And he went in. That was the plan. When they get to Canaan, this is also in Deuteronomy 1. So when we finish Numbers and go to Deuteronomy, Deuteronomy is it's kind of a repeat of almost everything we've had, not so much in some of Genesis, but it's a general repeat of Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers. So we're going to get it again. But the Lord spoke to Moses. The Lord wanted to test the people, I think, to see if in all that time they'd really learned anything. And the Lord said, send men to spy out the land of Canaan. Go in there kind of undercover, sneak around, find out how much you can find out about the people, about the land, about the soil, about how things grow, whether the people are big, whether they're good warriors. Try to find out. And to do that, you're not going to take the whole nation. So he said, take out 12, one from each tribe. So Moses sent them from the wilderness of Paran, according to the command of the Lord, all of them who were heads of children. Anyway, one person from each of the 12 tribes was chosen. Joshua, well, his name was Hashua. His father's name was Nun, N-U-N. His name was later changed by Moses to Joshua. He was one. Another one that you will remember is Caleb. All right. We have the list of the names of the people and, of course, their families that went. Verse 16. I just had some names that I didn't read. The names of the people and the names of their fathers and the names of the tribe. These are the names of the men whom Moses sent out to spy the land. And Moses called Hashua, the son of Nun, Joshua. Then Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan, and he said to them, go up by this way unto the south, then go up to the mountains and see what the land is like, whether people who dwell there are strong or weak, few or many, whether the land where they dwell is good or bad, whether the cities are like strongholds or camps. In other words, that they have big walls around them that we can't get over. Are they protected? Whether the land is rich or poor, and whether there are forests or not. If you have a variety of a kind of land, you're going to have a variety of kind of food. If you have forests, you're going to have wood with which to build things. If you have good ground, you're going to have ground that you can plant things and produce a lot of food. Now the time was near the season when the first grapes were getting ripe. So they went up and spied out the land from the wilderness of Sin, Z-I-N, Sin, as far as, and they give the places, as far as Rohab near the entrance of Hamath, and they went up through the south and they came to Hebron, and they mentioned several other cities where they came. Now Hebron was built 7 years before Zoan in Egypt. When they came to the valley of Eshcol, there they cut down a branch with one cluster of grapes. One cluster of grapes. They carried it between two of them on a pole. Now, most of us can take a cluster of grapes in our hands. They also brought home some pomegranates and figs. The place was called the Valley of Eshcol because of the cluster which the men of Israel cut down, the grapes that they cut down. And they returned from spying out the land after 40 days. 12 men go in, one representing each tribe. They go in, they bring back a sample of food they have spied out. Now they come back to give their report. Remember, 2 people, 3 people, 10 people can see the same thing. And because of how you were brought up, how you believe, who you are, you will see things as different. Some people would expect perfection. Other people could see a few things that would need work on, but if it was work they could do, they'd say, oh, everything's fine. I can, yeah, there's a few things. I can fix that. Everything's fine. So different people can see different things. But depending on their faith, on their individuality, on their culture, on how they were brought up, they're going to see the same thing, but they're going to see different things. They told him, we went to the land where you sent us. It truly flows with milk and honey. And this is the fruit. And they showed them a cluster of grapes. Nevertheless, the people who dwell in the land are strong. The cities are fortified and large. So if you're going to go in to fight, you're going to find big groups of people if the cities are large. You're not going to find a little camp over here, and a few miles later, 2 or 3 houses over there. They're fortified and large. We saw the descendants of the Anak. The descendants of the Anak are descendants of the Amalekites. You remember in the book of Genesis, we come to something that no minister will tell you for sure if they were giants. Well, they were large. Nobody will tell you for sure just exactly whether they were demons who went into the bodies of other people and caused them to do bad. We don't really know what happened in the Garden of Eden when God finally said, that's it. We can't have this anymore. I'm going to destroy everybody except one family with a flood. So they are describing, and later we're going to find that, yes, there were some giants. Now, giants are not like Jack and the Beanstalk. I'm trying to remember when I was a kid and I read those things, and it seemed like everything was going on down here. Jack and the Beanstalk, you had to look at it. These giants were like 7.5, 7.6, or the tallest would have been 8 feet. They're not, what I think of when I hear the word giants. We would say great basketball players. And the Amalekites and the Hittites and the Jebusites and the Ammonites, they dwell in the mountains. And the Canaanites dwell by the sea and along the banks of the Jordan. Let me tell you the difference, what it's talking about here when it says the sea and the Jordan. Israel is a long country. It's not very wide. The western side of, I guess I better do it this way, you do it backwards. The western side of Israel is on the Mediterranean Sea, and that's referred to as the sea or the Great Sea, and then it goes east to the Jordan River, and the Jordan River is what separates Israel from the country of Jordan, uh, the Emirates, Syria, and so forth. It's not very wide, but they did go from the Mediterranean Sea all the way to the Jordan. So they did cross the country east and west. They didn't north and south all of it, but they did get east and west. And they were saying where they'd been. Then Caleb, Joshua and Caleb were the two who saw things positively. Oh yeah, there's a lot of people, but we have God on our side. Oh yeah, there were, but it was wonderful. It was great. Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, "Let us go up at once and take possession, for we're able to overcome it." Yeah, it's got some problems, but hey, we can do it. But the men who'd gone up with him said, "We're not able to go up against the people, for they're stronger than we are." And they gave the children of Israel a bad report of the land in which they'd spied out, saying, um, I'm checking the time here. I'll tell you why in a minute. They'd gone up to spy the land that devoured the inhabitants, that devours its inhabitants. I can't talk, I guess, that sentence. And all the people that we saw are many and of great stature. They're real tall. There we saw giants, the descendants of Anak, and we were like grasshoppers. No, a grasshopper isn't even as tall as your shoe in our own sight. Now that is the end of chapter 3. What I'm going to do is close this part of the study. We've done chapter 12 and chapter 13. I'm doing it for a reason. We're almost 38 minutes into the lesson, and I want to give another short part as the second part as far as the videos for YouTube are concerned. And we're at a good place where our story changes a little bit, and so this is a good place to do it. So, and in the meantime, that'll give us who are present here and live at chat an opportunity to chat and discuss it and talk if we want to. So we'll be right back with video part 2.